All right. How's everybody doing? Hopefully, I'm live. If I am, just let me know because I'm not going to talk to myself for an hour again like I did about a month ago. So I'm not going to start the entire stream until I get someone in the comments letting me know that they can hear me. So if you can hear me, let me know in the comments, please, and thank you. Today, I'm going to be talking about Conan. So I'm going to rant a little bit about Conan, to say the least. But just waiting for someone in the comments to let me know that you can. Okay, great. Someone X, thank you very much for letting me know that you can hear me. Okay, so I'm going to call this series my weekly comic disaster because usually I'm going to have a comic disaster to talk about. But this week, the Conan that I'm going to talk about, it's not so much a disaster. It's not great, but I didn't give it a pass on my 10-second comic review. If you saw that, it got a 4 out of 10. So it really didn't pass. I'll put the new comic covers for Conan up on the screen for the new Marvel. I want to get some really good ones from the old Marvel after a while. But the reason why I think this new Conan series is really not working is, of course, because of who you have running Marvel right now. It's these SJW woke idiots running Marvel, and Conan is the exact opposite of that kind of idea. And they just don't know how to deal with this. You got Jerry Dugan doing the story, which he's fairly good at doing the story, but they're missing the point of Conan, as if you ask me. So I'm going to talk a lot about Conan because I love Conan, and especially I love the old Conan comics. Now, I'm not someone who is deep into the lore of the books themselves. I have read some of them. I didn't read them in order or anything like that. So most of my knowledge, I would say the basis, I'm going to talk about the Conan comics from Marvel. And the thing is that I think Conan the Barbarian, well, I'll start from the beginning. The reason why, if you're looking at the covers from the new Conan right now, the reason why these things don't work is exactly expressed on the covers for these new Conan. Okay. They descend into not very good covers after about 20 issues because we're on issue number 21 right now, I do believe. They started off with some fairly nice art pieces, and then you get this cover from number 21. Okay. This does not say Conan to me whatsoever. This is just some generic strongman, and you have a very demure woman in the background and a fight scene that you can't even see on the panel. It doesn't work. Okay. It just does not say Conan in any way. Now, I want to get back into the old Conan and talk about what actually worked for Conan, starting with the cover and going right through. And then I'll point towards where it is falling down within these new Conan books, especially this last one. So I want to break down the Conan Marvel into different sections. Okay. I'm not going to talk specifically about anything really about Conan except for Conan the Barbarian. I might mention the other ones a little bit, but it's mainly Conan the Barbarian because that's the main book for Marvel, and it always was. And the thing is that I can, in my head, anyways, I section it up into different parts, the entire run of Conan, because I think it was about 275, 200. No, it went actually a little more than that, 280. About how, that's how many issues actually went. Now, the first 20 to 25 Conan, I can't speak to because I've never read them, because I'm the kind of person, if I want to read a book, I need to have it in my hands and I need to own it. And those are fairly expensive books, although I'm not above actually spending that money on those Conan books. I've just never seen them for sale anywhere. So plug here for if anybody has some really old Conan, if they're in good condition, yeah, you can get a hold of me. I might buy them from you. I actually want to fill up a lot of holes in my Conan collection as well, because there's a lot that I'm missing in the early runs, and there's a lot that I have that aren't in good condition. I'd like to replace them. So I'm always looking for Conan and buying early Conan. But anyways, the thing is that I can't speak to the first 25 issues, but I would say from issue number 25 on to about issue, I think it was 68, you had an exact pattern of Conan that kept repeating itself. And this, I would say, is the quintessential comic at the very least, the quintessential Marvel comic that follows the Stan Lee rule to the letter. And the Stan Lee rule being that every comic is someone's first comic. So what you got to do with your story is you have to make sure that if the person is picking up this book for the first time, they can read it without being confused. Now, other Marvel comics did this very well. I think that the Chris Claremont and John Byrne X-Men did it very well, but it was continuous arcs at the same time. So they did have to reintroduce a bunch of stuff within the stories. But within the Conan, you have something different. Something, again, I would say is the quintessential Marvel comic, the quintessential Stan Lee comic, and because what you had from issue around 25 until issue 68, because 68 started the Bleat run, which goes all the way through to 100. What you had there was a very simple pattern, and it began like this. You had Conan. He was wandering around at the first of the book. He would run into some kind of trouble or other. This trouble would involve usually a beautiful woman and a monster, and sometimes the beautiful woman was the monster, but when he encountered the beautiful woman and the monster, he usually saved the monster. He usually saved the woman and killed the monster. Now, again, not always, because sometimes the woman was the monster, sometimes the woman died, sometimes the monster got away. But after he killed the monster, saved the woman, he would begin his wandering again because that part of the story was done. So with this comic, any early Conan comic, again, I would say from issue number 25 up until 68, you were able to pick up that Conan comic and read it and not have any idea about comics, not have any idea about Conan, not have any idea about the previous stories, and still get an entire story's worth. And it would begin and it would end, and that was all you needed. And you would think that repeating this pattern for more than 40 issues would be a problem, but it wasn't. Because again, you get Conan in different places, you get different kinds of women. And by the way, there was something really funny about Conan covers. It's the fact that I noticed this after reading it again. Whenever you had whatever kind of female that you had inside the cover, inside the comic, it was the exact opposite that you would get on the cover. So if you had a brunette in the story, on the cover, you would get a blonde. If you had a blonde in the story, you would get a brunette or a redhead on the cover. It was a bit, I don't know if they did that on purpose. I would say they probably did. But the thing is that you get different women, you get different monsters. There were always different monsters. You get different ways to defeat them. And you had Conan doing his best in different situations to try to defeat these monsters. But the point being that the repetition of this story didn't go stale for one very important reason. And again, this is why it's a quintessential Marvel comic. It's because if you were someone who only read Conan temporarily, if you picked up one issue here and another issue there, or you're someone who just picked up this book and that was it, you got one story as if it was a one shot, and you got a full story. You didn't have to buy another comic. You didn't have to be caught up on all of the stuff that came before. Because at the very top of every Conan comic, almost every Conan comic, they always had the statement from the Chronicles, right? It was the top of the first page, always took up the top, maybe 1 inch of the page, saying, "Know, O princes, that between the years when the oceans drank Atlantis and the gleaming cities, and the years of the rise of the sons of Arius, there was an age undreamed of, when shining kingdoms lay spread across the world like blue mantles beneath the stars. Hither came Conan, the Cimmerian, black-haired, sullen-eyed, sword in hand, a thief, a reaver, a slayer, with gigantic melancholies and gigantic mirth, to tread the jeweled thrones of the earth under his sandaled feet." I always found that last part very funny because for Marvel, I think Conan wore sandals maybe for about 5 issues of 270. But my point being that you had that introduction and it was the top of every first page. It was there. You could read it. Great. You were already caught up. For the new comics, for the new Marvel comics, these ones you're looking at in the background, they take an entire page to do that. Not the top 1 inch or less than 1 inch of the first page, an entire page. Usually it's the back of the front cover. I think it may be because no one will actually advertise with Marvel anymore. So they got all this extra space. I don't know. But then they take in another entire page and they catch you up on the story. Besides that first introduction, it's ridiculous. Taking 2 pages out of your entire book to do something that you could, if you wrote a good story, cover within 1 inch of the first page, which was continually done for over 275 issues of Conan already. So there's that with the new Conan. But again, to get back to the old Conan, that run from 25 up until 68, you had that pattern that was repeated over and over again for every comic, where if you just picked it up, that was it. But if you were someone who continually read Conan and picked up every issue or goes back and reads every issue, if you're someone like that, then there is an extra layer to the story that you get that no one else gets if they're just picking up the one story. And the thing is that this story, this continuous story, is the story of the Man of Conan, because he's the only character in all of these books. Because again, you don't get a repetition of any character except for possibly Red Sonja in a couple of books, but that's it. And the only character you get is Conan, and it is the story of his life. It's a story of his journey. If you look at story after story after story, it's a continuous journey. He's going somewhere. So where he picks up in this issue that you're reading, it's where he left off in the last issue. And that's the exact area. If you have a map of the Hyborian Age, you'll know exactly where he is and you'll be able to follow it. So it's a continuous journey of this man. And it's a continuous journey of this man to get what he is looking for, which is his own kingdom. Okay, so there's that extra layer that you don't get if you're just reading one issue here and one issue there. And that's fine. You don't need to get that if you're reading those one issues. But if you read the entire thing, you get an entire another level of story. And this is very unique for Conan the Barbarian from Marvel. This is not the way that the original books were written. The original books were written in a very haphazard way, where you get one story at one point, which is Conan in his later life, and then the next story is Conan in his early life, and then you might get one that's between those two. So it wasn't contiguous in any way. Same thing happens with Savage Sword of Conan. These are one-shot stories. They don't connect to each other. Usually there's like 2 or 3 stories in the Savage Sword, which was the magazine edition of the Conan stories coming out from Marvel. It started about 2-3 years, maybe more, maybe 5 years. I think it's only 2 or 3 after Conan the Barbarian started. So again, Conan the Barbarian was very unique in that it had that extra layer of story where you had this continuous journey. And this is what I love about Conan. This is why when I'm usually talking about heroes, a lot of people say, how can you love Conan? How is Conan a hero? And I look at Conan, I think maybe in a unique way. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is not what Roy Thomas actually meant to put down, because the great artists of this era for Conan was, I think, let me double check. I got Conan right here next to me. So it's John Buscema. I do believe I'm pronouncing his name right. Maybe I'm not. Buscema, John Buscema, doing the art for almost, well, for that entire run, certainly. And I think it was usually Roy Thomas that was doing the storyline, and he handled almost all of the stories. So that team was the greatest Conan team ever. And they knew how to write Conan. They knew how to draw Conan. So they're the ones who drew everybody into the story. And I got to say, the art, again, this is another thing which drives me nuts with the new Conan, because the art is much too clean. In the old John Buscema art, you could feel the dirt on these people. You could smell the stink off of the pages from the people that he is putting down on the page. He was beautiful at doing this. And it actually didn't work in a lot of his other work. If I remember correctly, he did a run on Rom, which I have. And then he did also things like Fantastic Four Versus, where it was the original story where you had Franklin Richards coming in contract with Mephisto. I do believe he drew both of those as well. And the look on the people's faces, the scowls on people's faces really didn't work with the normal Marvel comics, but it worked beautifully with Conan. He was a beautiful artist, the best artist ever, I think, to put on this book. But anyways, my point being that I see Conan as a hero. Why? Well, because you have to remember where he ends up. He ends up as Conan the King. So to put it in D&D terms, I think most people would probably see Conan the Barbarian as being chaotic good or maybe chaotic neutral, whereas he ends up lawful good because he ends up a king, right? Now, I would say he would be, if he was chaotic, I would say he would be chaotic good because he always goes that tiny little extra step to help the woman, to help the damsel in distress just a little bit, right? So he's he might be considered by some to be chaotic neutral, but I would say chaotic good. But that's only if you look at, again, things individually. If you look at and he comes from a tribe. Now, again, I confuse sometimes the books with the Marvel comics. So originally his tribe was a northern mountain tribe that took its place from its place where it lived. They had to conquer it from basically a bunch of Yetis, which were another tribe, because man was devolving and turning into monkeys and all these other kinds of subspecies at that time. Anyways, so he actually lived in a tribal setting, in a clan setting, and his clan, his tribe gets pretty much wiped out. And the thing is that I look at it, again, according to where he begins and where he ends. I'd say he ends as lawful good because he's a king. But I would say he begins as lawful good also because if you look at a lot of tribal cultures, we'll say clan cultures, like Scottish cultures and things like that, Scottish clans, anything like that. These are very lawful societies, although they might not have laws written down. It's more tradition than anything else. They are lawful, quite lawful. And so I would say he starts off lawful good as well. And the thing is that since his tribe is no longer there, since his clan is no longer there, and he's wandering out throughout the world to try to find his kingdom where he can reestablish his clan, what he's doing is he's living out all of those customs and beliefs and the system of law that he originally had when he was in his clan, when he was in his tribe. And it's just that everybody calls him a barbarian because no one else can recognize this. No one else within the society can recognize the nobility and the lawfulness of the clan system that he's still living out because there's no one left but him. He's the only one who lives this way anymore. And that's why I would say he's a hero throughout the entire run. I would say he's a lawful good hero throughout the entire thing. He's following his own code of conduct to look for a kingdom in order to establish this kingdom once again. And he establishes it and he becomes a lawful good monarch. And again, I would say he's lawful good throughout his entire run. You might not agree with me on that. I would say you could look at it very easily in other ways. Look at it as if he was chaotic neutral or chaotic good. But that's the way I look at it. I see him as a hero. And the thing is that, again, that's the great thing about reading the Conan books, the old Conan books, in succession. You get to see his journey. Again, it's always comes back to, I'm trying to establish a kingdom. So he's looking for something. He's looking for someone as well. He's looking for a queen. But that's why this book works so well within those early issues. And that's why this new Conan really falls down. Because even when you get into the later parts of Conan the Barbarian, the old run, where you get into issues 68 through 100, again, where you have the Bleat storyline. So he's with the Raiders of the Black Coast and the Queen of the Black Coast, which is Bleat. I do believe, I can never pronounce her name right. It's got a little weird symbol over the E. It's what is it, Exinumon or something like that. Yeah, the only way I can think to pronounce is Bleat, which is funny. I got to say, Marvel tried to reboot that character, and the only way they could reboot that character, and they had a run, they tried to make it a character unto itself within Marvel a couple of years ago, year and a half ago. The thing was that there's no way that SJW people could rewrite that character except to strip the entire history from that character and only use the fact that A, her name is Bleat, and B, she was a pirate. That's it. That's all they kept. Everything else is out the window. There's no Conan within her life, and all of her backstory was completely changed because she's the queen of the Black Coast. And the Black Coast, by the way, if you're looking at the Hyborian age map, it's basically the western coast of Africa. And she was raised by the Black tribes of Africa. That's why she's queen of the Black Coast. And she was queen of the, oh, I can't remember if she's queen of the Black tribe or something like that. But you got to remember, I think it's Robert E. Howard, who was the original writer of these books, lived in a time and in a place where they weren't terribly sensitive about those kinds of things. And even if you read the early runs of Conan, where you go back to the Bleach storyline from 68 to 100, again, you get the Black pirates who are the people who make up Bleach's fleet, not really fleet, but make up the people who man her ship, the sailors. They're all talking in, well, they say things like, are you using jujube? So those are the kind of things that they say, right? So again, they tried to reboot that character, and their only way that they could do that is to strip the entire history of the character away and start anew, which was ridiculous. But anyway, I would say even in that run from 68 to 100, again, he's still looking for a queen. He thinks that he's found her, and so he stays with her for a long time. I think it really kills the story. They're not my favorite Conan, but after that, you get issue 100 up until close to the end, where about 75. Again, you get the same pattern over and over again, but they start to extend it a little bit. You get storylines that cover 3 or 4 comics instead of just one, especially if you're, involving Red Sonja and a couple of his other companions. You got the haiku trilogy, which is really funny because you have this ongoing Conan book, right? And it's been going on. I think the I can't remember exactly how to pronounce it again, but the storyline, I did a video about it at the first of my channel. It was up to about issue 250, and they had to put on the cover of the Conan comics one in a 3-issue trilogy. Why? Because they had to let people know that even by the time they're at issue number 250, that, yeah, they're going to take this story and continue it on for 3 Conan issues. Why? Because they're used to taking one issue, one shots, and you have an entire story there, except for little smatterings here and there. So I would say this is the quintessential Marvel comic that follows the rule of Stan Lee. And again, it has beautiful art and is told very well. Now, there are problems with the story. I'll tell you that. When you read Conan, I mean, you go to things like issue 40 and 41. He's wandering through a desert. Again, it's a continuous story if you read the entire thing. He's wandering through this desert for like 10 issues, and he's trying to get from one side to the other. But at some point, he goes through the desert and he's wandering for 3 days, and he has no pack with him. He has no food with him. He has what looks like no water with him. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, if he's wandering through the desert for 3 days, his horse would be dead. I'm sorry. Anyways, so there are holes in the story. It's not the most perfect thing in the world, but to me, it's really about the journey of the man and how the man fits into the world. Or for Conan, really, he would think of it in the way that how the world fits into his plan. And that's what he's searching for. He's searching for his kingdom. He's being heroic in his own way, in the way that his tribe would want him to be. And that's what is missing from these current Conan, especially this last one. Because I usually give the Conan a pass, not very big, usually a 5, a 6, maybe a 7 if it's really good. That's about it. But the thing is that because these SJWs can't write the character correctly and don't know its history, I would say Jim Zub probably does know the history, but he's hamstrung. He can't write Conan as Conan because, of course, the people around him would not let him do so. The people at Marvel probably won't let him do so. And the thing is that, yeah, again, it's funny because my last video about Kelly Sue DeConnick, I'll probably talk about this in video coming up on Saturday as well, Saturday, Sunday, whenever I put it up. The second issue of what she was talking about in her drafts, she was talking about this very fact that she was describing someone like Conan and how that was misogynistic to the hilt, right? So I can see why Jim Zub might be hamstrung trying to write these stories. But the thing is, again, that these people who are at Marvel right now and write a lot of comics, they don't understand the driving force behind these characters. And I would say again, that driving force is Conan searching for his kingdom. And it's not there. And if it's not there, then these books don't really mean anything. There's no reason for them except for a funny story that involves a monster or some kind of thing that the author comes up with. And again, if there's no reason for it, why am I paying $5 for this? There is a reason for the old Conan comics. Again, I think it's heroic. I think he's a hero. But you could think differently and still read them and enjoy them. But again, there's something that ties them all together. And there's something that drives the character, which is funny because I listen to a lot of these Marvel writers talk about how they write a comic, these woke, quote unquote, progressive SJW people who write comics. They're always talking about, I want to find the driving force behind why this character does what they do. I need to find the engine for their motivation. And the thing is that you're writing a Marvel character. The engine for their motivation was written 50 years ago. Well, 40 or 30 years ago at the very least. You need to go back and actually find it because it's already been there for decades. But you don't want to do that work. Therefore, they don't know what it is. Therefore, they don't actually write the characters correctly. Or at the very least, what they do is, this is why I think in part they deconstruct characters. Why? Because they don't want to go through all that work of having to find out why this character does what they do. So they're going to break the character down to its component parts and then rebuild it according to how they want to write the character. And then they don't have to do any of that work. They just write the character based upon their own work. And that's it, which is just breaking the character beyond recognition for anybody who has read old comics. Part of the reason why I love comics is because I have the history of them in my boxes and boxes full of comics. And I know it and I can go back and read it again. If you're going to break from that entire history, then no, I don't want to read your book. If you have something tied to a history, yeah, I do. This is why when I gave up comics in the 90s, it was around Heroes Reborn, because that's exactly what they did. They took the old characters, every character, and they rebooted the entire Marvel universe, which is what I mostly bought was Marvel. And I thought to myself, first of all, these are not good books. These are not good stories. You might have some decent art, but they're not good stories. And you've disconnected them from the entire history that I own. So I don't care. So anyways, this is why I'm ranting about Conan. It's because, again, they have no idea what the motivation for Conan is. Or if Jim Zub actually does, then he's not allowed to express it. Because, of course, Conan is looking to become the patriarch of an entire nation because he wants his clan to actually begin again. He wants to bring that law that he grew up in onto the world again. And that's not something these SJW people can even consider putting down on a page. But I would think it'd make a great story. And again, the funny thing is that for Conan, you got to remember these books actually sold really well. When Marvel started Conan, the reason why it would start something like Conan, DC had been doing similar kinds of stories with Tarzan for more than 200 issues at that point, I do believe. So it was going for about 10 to 15 years. And they were taking that kind of pattern and trying to repeat it with Marvel in a Marvel way, which they did. And after a couple of years of Conan the Barbarian, you got Savage Sword of Conan. You got them trying to do Red Sonja 2 or 3 times. And that story never took off, but they tried over and over again. You also had other things like, what was that other book? I think it was like Thaganor or something like that, which had at least 30 issues. And on the very cover of it, it said, a story just like Conan. If you love Conan, you'll love this. So they were playing off of all of the people they could draw in with Conan. And besides that, of course, they had other things like John Carter, Warlord of Mars, which was very, very similar, and a bunch of other books like Khazar as well. And these were all coming off of this same kind of storytelling of Conan. These were large selling books at their time. They weren't the largest, but they drew in an audience, and a very devoted audience at that. And I was one of them. But again, it was because there was a unique quality to these books. and it's no longer there. And it shows in these covers. Again, the early covers for this run, which started, I do believe, 2019. You get some good art pieces within the first 10. And then you get ridiculous pictures of Conan just standing there as if he's about to do something. You don't know really what. By the way, these early ones, I think it's issue like 1 to 10. I went over them within one of my older videos talking about color, because this is your female color palette coming out with the orange and teal effect going through all of these Conan books. You can see the orange and teal. Just look at that, number 4. Orange and teal. That's what you got. This orange and teal effect, which is a feminine color palette, which is meant to evoke emotion. That's why it's feminine. Anyways, the thing is that when you had those original comics of Conan, especially from 25 to 68, you always not only got a pattern within the story, but you got a pattern on the front cover as well. That pattern was you had Conan fighting a monster, and in the background, you had a beautiful woman. You never see that within these current Conan covers. This recent one is the only one really. I think there's only like 2 or 3 covers that you actually have a woman in the background of this cover, of this comic. One of them is a woman who's fighting beside Conan. I think another one might have something similar to it. Oh, there's one where Conan is sitting amongst a bunch of women. I think Zach said it looks like Conan and the girls' night out, as if Conan was one of the girls. That's the only thing you're going to get, right? Within the last issue, 21, you get this woman who is like an, I don't know, Japanese or Chinese kind of descent, because they're in that area of the world. And she's just standing there with a parasol. This is not Conan, right? They can't even do the covers right. They've devolved to the point where Conan was canceled within the last run at issue 278, something like that. And they've devolved into this cover right here. She's standing there with a parasol. Yeah. And Conan, again, you get this muscular guy. He's doing something. You really can't tell, punching a guy, but there's monsters in the background and you don't understand. I don't understand what they're trying to do with this cover. It's ridiculous. It doesn't look like Conan. And again, you don't have John Buscema. You don't have his level of art. It's much too clean. Same with the storytelling. Their magic system within this new Conan, their magic systems, I should say, they're much too clean. The old magic systems of the old Conan books, they were something you could never pin down. They were something that was just chaotic beyond belief. You couldn't put any rules to it. And similarly with the art, it looked so dirty in a very good way because it helped explain the story. I don't know. Maybe I'm ranting about this and maybe I'm off base completely about it. You tell me what you think about in the comments. And I think I talked for about 40 minutes now. So I'm going to go through the comments. Hopefully some of you guys have something to tell me about Conan. If you have any other questions, that's fine. I just ask that you might tag me so that I can see them right off and put a question mark at the end. And that way I can pull them up. Now, before I get to the comments, as always, I just want to let everyone know that if you're not getting notifications for my videos, besides my live streams, which I try to do every week, sometimes I can't, like last week, because my internet just isn't very good. I put out a video every weekend. So you might want to check my channel on Saturday, Sunday, depending on what time zone you're in. At the very least, if you check Sunday afternoon, I should have a video up. I haven't missed a weekend for over 2 years now. So you might go to my channel physically just by clicking on the channel and go and see if there is a new video if you're not getting notifications. Besides that, my graphic novel, Thomas Valiant, is still available on Indiegogo. So the link right now is in the description for Thomas Valiant if anyone wants to go and take a look at my graphic novel, my attempt to take the great story elements that I have seen throughout comic history and put them down on a page with spectacular art, by the way, by Renzo Rodriguez. And it's an 80-page giant. And it is my attempt to try and tell a true hero story. I would love to tell a Conan story within future comics. I'm trying furiously to get Thomas Valiant out. Renzo and I do have plans to do another book, but sometime in the future, I want to do a Conan-like story. I don't want to do Conan himself, although again, as I said last week, I could, because he's now in the public domain, or at the very least, his early stories are now in the public domain. Um, and you have a lot of people, especially in Europe, doing Conan stories and Conan comics. But I want to do my own character, something that is very much akin to Conan, but slightly different, because I like to put my own take on things. So I would love to do that in the future. I'm also, I have sort of a story banging around in my head. I just need someone, again, someone with art like John Buscema. Uh, Again, I can't remember how to pronounce his name. I need an artist like that. So I don't consider doing a book until I found the right artist. So I got to find that artist. By the way, some of the reason why, again, so I'm told, that his art is so great is because what he did was, well, first of all, he could just put a scowl on people's faces that really penetrated right into you, and you knew what this person was thinking. But besides that, what he usually did was he did the pencils for the comic, and then he gave it to an inker who supposedly, usually the inkers were foreign born inkers or living in a foreign place. So I don't think, maybe they're Filipino. I'm not entirely sure. But what the inkers did was they took his drawings and not only inked them, but then they added an entire another level of detail to the art itself. And that's why in these older Conan comics, you'll see, let's say he's at a banquet and on the table is a tray of fruit. And you'll see that every last grape is drawn with just care towards the art. Or if you have a city in the background, every last spire, every last little detail for this city is brought out in that one panel that it's actually shown. Or details on something within a palace, like a colonnade or some kind of detail within the work in the background. So this is what his inkers did. And having that double layer of art for these books again made the visuals spectacular for that. I would love, again, if I ever get to do a Conan like book, which I really hope I do, to A, find the right artist, and B, find someone who can ink like that. I want to, again, I want to do what you need to do in order to make a great comic. And this is a lost art. This is something that no one does anymore. But to do that is to create something that is truly a work of art. These older Conan comics, a lot of people look at them and they sell them for $1. And I'm thinking, why? These are some of the best Marvel comics there are. Anyway, I said I was going to get to the comments. So I'll get to the comments. Let's see who's here. Mudvale has been here for a while, I think, waiting for the show to start. Oz the Great Sage is here. Flame Destroyer is here. Blood Muffin. Please don't ruin Conan. No. I'm not the one ruining Conan. Marvel's the one ruining Conan. Unfortunately. Hopefully, I think Jim Zub really could write good Conan stories, and he does his best, and he does do a good job. But again, the art does not allow for the dirt that Conan needs to have. It does not allow for it. It's much too clean, much too clean. And again, he's not allowed to really express the great elements of why Conan does what he does. And therefore, the stories feel hollow. So, Mudvale says, hey, this is RJ. Okay. So, scrolling down just a little bit. Scrolling down. Again, I'm going to look for comments that are questions, if at all possible. So I apologize if I don't get to your comment and I pass by it. Let's see. Here's a question. Let's see if it's for me. Manny says, hey, did it start yet? My phone is slow. Hopefully I started. People said they could hear me, so hopefully you can still hear me. If I can't, if I've been talking again for what now? 45 minutes, 40 minutes, and talking to myself again about Conan. That's not actually a bad thing. I usually talk to myself a lot. But anyway, scrolling down, everybody's saying hello to each other in the comments, which is great. I'm glad to see that we're actually getting people in here that are familiar with each other and can chat in the comments to themselves. Tom says, hey, it's RJ, and I can clearly hear his voice. Well, clearly is subjective, I think, Tom, because I mumble and fumble so much when I'm live. But I appreciate the sentiment, certainly. So scrolling down a little bit, scrolling down, see if we have any questions. Yes, there is some nice cover art here. Again, um, I do agree. The first 10 issues did have some nice cover art. I tried to upload the old cover art for Conan and some of the Jusku um, Savage Sword of Conan art, but I didn't get it up in time. That's why I was actually late in starting the stream. It just wouldn't load for me. Maybe let's see if I can hold on. I'll see if I can put it on the share screen. It might slow down my video just a little bit. Let's put some of this old art in the background. See if we can do that. Okay, well, let's play that. Okay. Give me a second. I'm just working with StreamYard here to try and see if I can do this. I don't know why it's not going. Well, I'll get it up hopefully before the end of the stream. So, going back to the comments. Yes, there is some nice art in those original covers for the last run, this run, about the first 10 of them. But again, the color palette is just awful. It's just mud. That's what I call it. If you look at this is mud. And you'd think that, again, I'm talking about Conan Needs Dirt. No, this is not dirt. This is emotional. Again, orange and teal. The last cover was orange. This one, teal. Orange and teal effect. This is, I talked about for almost 2-3 videos about this color palette, because the reason why they use orange and teal is that it's the basic color palette that you will see when the sun is rising and when the sun is setting, and it triggers something within the mind of the person. It gives you a hyper awareness of emotion and things like that, because I don't know. Well, because you're moving into, I guess it would be your ancient brain saying you're moving into a time where there's a little bit of danger because you're no longer going to be able to see. So there is a heightened emotional state that comes with seeing those colors. But again, they use them way too much. So scrolling down, what is best in life? What is best in life? To destroy Marvel, see their sales driven before you, and to hear the lamentation of their writers. Ah, that's beautiful. What beautiful words. Those are much needed words that people need to hear. Although I have to say, I enjoy the old Conan movies, I really do. But that character is completely different than any Conan in any of the books, any of the stories, even in Marvel, just because of his upbringing. Of course, he wasn't a slave. No way was Conan a slave. He was a man. He grew up as a man. I think it was 15 when he killed his first bear with a knife, and he was still part of his tribe at that time. Again, this is not the current Conan either, because I think the current Conan, I think they sort of tried to reboot the story in these comics, these current comics, where his entire tribe was destroyed at the time of his birth. So I'm not entirely sure where they were going with that and why they tried to change it. But again, it's hard to tell with Conan just because there are so many different storylines going from so many different sources. It's hard to keep track. I want to read that again because, again, I think this is something that bears repeating. What is best in life? To destroy Marvel, see their sails driven before you, and hear the lamentation of their writers. Yes, indeed. All right, so Drew says the comic disaster this week was X Corp. Yeah, I didn't get to read that. So unfortunately, I need to buy some of the X-Men because I only review things that I buy. And sometimes I just loathe to pick them up, even if I'm going to roast them. So scrolling down, Drew says the Sumerian series is terrific. Is that the current one? Because there is a current Sumerian series coming out. Because, again, these are, I do believe, books that are coming out of Europe. They can't use, if I remember correctly, they can't use the name Conan on the cover. This is the deal that they made with the being published in America, because the I don't know what is it, the trademark for the copyright for Conan is expired in Europe, but it's not quite expired in America. So what is happening is that you can publish these stories in Europe and you can then take them over to America, but they agreed only to be able to do that if they didn't have Conan, the name, on the cover of the book. So you have ones that say the Cimmerian or other kinds of story titles like that. So scrolling down. Let's see. Scrolling down. Hex Harper says Beefcake Yo Jimbo. Okay. Why did I make a better sounding story than whatever is in this comic? Yeah. Some of these Marvel comics, you can come up with a better premise just off the top of your head. So scrolling down. So Time of Dying says, I like the idea of Conan, but could never quite get into it. Yeah, it is something you need to get into. I agree. I would say, again, you could pick up a story, and if you were gravitating towards those kind of stories, especially those early Conan, you could read it, and that's all you need. But you could get into the story very much deeper if you read them continuously. But again, that's only for Conan the Barbarian. It's not for Savage Sword of Conan. And if you add in all of the other stuff that they put in Conan, it was sometimes hard to keep track of what was going on. So scrolling down. Let's see, scrolling down. A little bit of talk about Conan here from Fizz Chozo. Says, Renaissance Publishing, I'm currently looking for people who would actually care about the story of my comic book universe. I thought he was talking about Conan, but he must be completing a conversation with someone else. So I will just leave that. Oh, look, Man of Action is in the house. Great. Savage Sword of Conan was a jam back in the day. You got that magazine. It kept you going for a month sometimes too. Man of Action is one of my old subscribers, and he's the one who gave me so much information to try to break that story about Son Amanat that I originally did. So I am eternally indebted to Man of Action because I think that helped me explain Marvel Comics more than anything else. But yes, Man of Action, you are completely correct. Savage Sword of Conan was beautiful. And I think I actually own more of the Savage Sword of Conan run than I do Conan the Barbarian, to my shame. But of course, that's all in black and white. The best Conan story, I'll have to say, the best Conan story ever from Marvel. I call it Conan on the Cross. It's not really. I think it's Conan and the Tree of Death, because they crucify Conan. And that is from issue 5 of the Savage Sword of Conan. But I don't actually own that. But what I own is the Treasury collection. I don't remember. I think it's number 23. Treasury edition of that story, which Treasury editions are those really large Marvel comics that came out, and they reprinted that story in the Treasury edition and they colored it. And the thing is that when you get to see John Buscema's art blown up to that size, you can really see the detail in everything. It's beautiful. So yeah, Savage Sword was something, again, I could not find it in every place that I went. It was very difficult to find. So if you got your Savage Sword of Conan back in the day, you did cherish it for a while. So scrolling down. Let's see. Daniel says, 2 of my favorite comic YouTubers having a live stream at the same time, and I am just swapping between the two. Just if you're here still, Daniel, who's the other one? Just let me know, because I don't like to step on other people's toes, but this is the time slot that I think works best for me. So we'll go back to Man of Action. He has another comment saying, Marvel's run of Conan was alongside Marvel's same title, Kull the Conqueror. Oh, I completely forgot about Kull. Both were pretty damn good. I only recently have ever bought comics from the internet. I only buy comics that are in my comic shop, and I go through everything. But I could not find early Cull. I just couldn't. I have later Cull. So what I did was I bought the entire first 25 issues of Cull the Conqueror. I think it was last year. And that was money well spent, let me tell you. So I have issue 1, issue 2. They're in fairly good condition too. I'd say probably an 8. But oh, here we go. In the background we have some of that good old comic Conan art. And again, you'll see, let me take Man of Action down there for a second. You'll see in the background with these old Conan covers, you get Conan fighting a monster and a beautiful woman in the background. That's what you get almost every time. So, and it does draw in, again, it draws in the people you want to buy Conan. So, let's see. Fake account says, is this comic any good or woke garbage? Well, it's not exactly woke garbage. There are some issues that you have woke nonsense in it, where again, Conan gets saved by a bunch of women, which again, there are some stories where Conan does have that. I think the Sisterhood of the Wolf and things like that. But really, you can't take that from modern Marvel and not read something into it, right? So they're okay. For someone like me who loves Conan and is looking for constant Conan stories, yeah, I'll buy them and I'll read them. But again, sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not. But mostly, Jim Zub stays away from the woke garbage. Mostly. If it does appear, it's only very small. But at the same time, again, as I said previously, I think he's hamstrung in actually telling the true Conan story because of all the woke nonsense around him and the way that people who run Marvel actually think in a woke nonsense way. So let me start this up if it's not going in the background, these covers again. So scrolling down, somebody talking about Cull. My only experience with Cull is the Kevin Sorbo movie. Oh no, no. You gotta find Cull the Conqueror. And there are some really unique ways of telling a story that Cull and Conan both put out there. I love some of the stuff that they did with the panel art in those early Cull. So, Man of Action here talking about Cull. Yeah, Cull, it's a comic book for meat eaters. You are indeed correct. I think that's exactly right. Exactly it. What you got in Marvel right now is soy boy and what, vegans. I'm sorry, no, you want meat eaters. Let's see. Sword and Sorcery when it was cool, 70s and 80s. The thing is that when it was cool, Sword and Sorcery, I think it was because it was so dirty, because there weren't these rules. Again, there are just too many rules to things. I like a good rule system for magic or stuff like that if you're going to put it in a story. But at the same time, having it so that you don't understand it, like back in the 70s and 80s, yeah, there was something to it that was really, really interesting. KJ says, hey RJ. So, how you doing, KJ? Scrolling down. Someone says, slightly better than average Joe says, He-Man is going to be awesome. Now with 100% Teleman? Teleman. Are they making a new He-Man movie? I didn't even know. Which is funny because I did run across this video on YouTube. I don't know how accurate it actually is, but they were saying that the original concept for He-Man came from not Conan, but from Call the Conqueror. They were saying that they were going to make a Call the Conqueror series, and so Skeletor came from the old Call the Conqueror villain. He was a lich, basically, and looked very much like Skeletor, but they just couldn't make it work for the time frame, which I do believe was early 80s, and they thought, we just can't put this on television for kids. And so they scrapped the idea and then decided to redo the entire thing under a more kid-friendly, I don't know, visual, and then came up with He-Man to replace Cull, and you had Skeletor kept basically as the same villain for that hero that they originally said. Again, this is a story that I heard from someone on the internet, which did a video about it on YouTube. So whether or not it's actually true, I don't know. But it's an interesting idea. So scrolling down, another point. It was simple, nothing overly complex, nothing deep. It was like John Wick films, which was nothing but a man wanting to avenge a gift from his dead wife. That's it. Again, I agree. That's exactly what I was just talking about. Like magic systems. This this new book, number 21 for Conan, this woman that is the sorceress that takes over basically the book from Conan. She becomes the hero in the Conan story. She's using a magic system that has these magic symbols that look like something you'd see in anime. It's got much too much structure in it for Conan. It's even that simple thing that's only really shown in 2 panels of the entire book. I think it kills part of what the Conan story should be. It's not simple enough. I agree. Dirt and grime, simple. That's what you need for a Conan story. Man of Action says the new Conan book is iffy. It's done by Barry Windsor Smith. New Conan book. Which is that? Tell me, there's a new Barry Windsor Smith Conan book? I do not know of this. Please tell me, please, Man of Action, if this is an actual new book, put that in the comments. I will search this thing out. So, scrolling down. Yeah, I agree. Some of the new stories are awful. So, scrolling down. Now I'm going to have to read every Man of Action comment just in case he talks about this book that I am missing. Let's see. Buscema, I do believe that's how you say it, did a hell of a job on Conan 2, the old series. You could follow it, and it was going somewhere. Agreed completely. Renaissance Publishing says Conan is such an awesome character. Marvel messed him up with garbage writing. The current run. I agree. Again, I still buy them. I'm still going to buy them, but I don't think it has much life left in it. They've already canceled Savage Sword of Conan, and they've already canceled all the other smaller titles that were from the same author. The Bleach series, which was complete garbage, again written by an SJW feminazi. It was just completely awful, and woke garbage. That was woke garbage. That was canceled. Also, Dark Agnes is gone. They tried to, I do believe, with the Serpent Crown or the one before that, it's the miniseries that they did. They tried to bring in Solomon Kane, but that didn't work either. And the only thing that they have left now is the Conan the Barbarian and the Savage Avengers, which I don't know about that book either. Don't get me started on that book. So scrolling down. You skinny guy, back Thomas Valiant last week. I'm so stoked to read it. Thank you very much. Hopefully, I am going to get something into your hands that every reader is going to enjoy. It's my intent. So scrolling down, see if we have any. See if we have any comments for me. Scrolling down. Conan is neutral good. He understands law and order, but he's not bound to it. Okay. I think he's bound to his own code of conduct. And again, I think that's the code of conduct that came from his tribe, his clan. So I do believe he's bound by his own code, which used to be a code of conduct for an entire race of people. Well, an entire section of people at the very least. But he's the only one who follows it anymore. So scrolling down. Flame Story says this seems like the ideal story structure for a sustainable audience. Agreed. Again, I do believe these early Conan that you're looking at in the background, these issues from number 25 to about 68, they were the quintessential Marvel comic. And I think Stan Lee really, really did a great thing when he picked this up. So JD says Conan the Barbarian was the first comic I ever read. My older brother always had a stack of them around the house. That was one thing too, about Conan. Maybe that's the reason why they're so cheap right now. If you want to go buy Conan, it's because they were everywhere. I agree. Conan books were everywhere. And that was the great thing about these books. You could pick them up. They would be, well, at the very least for me, anyways. And I think for JD and uh, other people, they were books that everybody would have one copy of at the very least. So if you could get into it. So um, scrolling down. Lawful means one has a code or set of principles they're not willing to bend. Again, the funny thing is about Conan is that he's willing to bend everybody else's rules. I do, again, this is just me. Maybe I'm reading way too much into this. I think he's willing because he comes into the quote unquote civilized world, right? Which is much less civilized than the mountain tribe of barbarians that he's from. Almost everywhere in these cities, they're much less civilized than his own tribe of North living men in, well, I don't, they lived in a village. It wasn't caves, but they were what the normal civilized people would consider barbarians. And he, I think, is looking at the rest of the world as barbarians, so he's willing to break their rules. That's for sure. Let's see. Fake account says, I read a Conan comic where he touches a stone or something that lets him see the future and he sees astronauts and stuff and JFK. I can never remember. He may have seen, I think, because I do believe it was a prophecy told to him or that he saw that he would be a king. So it's not entirely far fetched for a Conan comic. So X Harper says he can see my line of thinking. Well, thank you very much. I do. Most people tell me I have a very unique way of thinking, to say the least. I'll take the John Candy line from Planes, Trains, and Automobiles about unique. Yeah, that's me. Unique. So scrolling down, Man of Action says the original hero's journey. Yeah, I do believe very stripped down hero's journey for Conan, and it's something that sold me. Here we go. Comment saying the fourth age. In the original stories, Conan didn't lose his tribe. He was looking for his fortune and decided he would rule Aquilonia. I do believe it's Aquilonia. So again, um, I do get confused sometimes between the different iterations of Conan because there's now so many different backstories for Conan. But even if his tribe wasn't destroyed, he's still trying to impose those system of beliefs onto what he is going to rule in the future. So scrolling down, Conan the Barbarian versus Agathar. Agatha Harkness. Oh, Agatha Harkness. That would be one interesting fight. Agatha. Something. What's the name Agatha mean? I think it's no Latin for sheep. Anyways, no, it's Agnes. Right. Sorry. Sorry, my mind goes in strange ways sometimes. Agatha Harkness. Yeah. The thing was that he would cut her in half, and I wouldn't be at all teared up about her dying either. I really, this is one of the things I love about Conan is he hates magic. I think that when again, if I ever get to, and I really want to write a story about a Conan-like character, that's one of the things I'm going to keep. Someone who hates magic, just hates it, and tries to destroy anybody who uses it. This is one of the things again that I don't like about the new Conan. He always is found working with these magical people or magical swords or things like that. No, I don't see that as Conan. Maybe I'm wrong, but I really don't. Maybe he'll use it to his advantage, but not really work with them so that he's given them the time of day. So scrolling down, Man of Action has another quote. The glistening black skin of the savage, Conan leapt at his throat with a howling roar. Yes, what was the original story? What I always call him, panther-like or pantheric or something like that, like a panther, because it's one of the things that I really like about Conan is, again, they call him Conan the Barbarian, but one of the points is, well, actually, more than one of the points is that he's not actually stupid, right? You got to pick this up from reading the comics over a large section. You do realize that he's from an entirely cut off area of the world, and he goes into the rest of the world, and they speak different languages everywhere that he goes, and he picks up these languages pretty darn quick. This is one of the things, again, they had to, for the new Conan, when they take him into the Savage Avengers, where they bring him into the future, they skip this entire thing by having Doctor Strange implant some magic into his head so he can speak English. No, this is Conan. Conan is actually picking up languages left and right all the time. Besides that, he's a tactician. Now, he may not be the, you know, I don't know, Thucydides kind of, or say, you know, Leonidas. He's not the Leonidas kind of tactician, maybe, but he is a tactician. And again, he becomes a ruler and he uses these skills to become a king. And there was another thing. What's the other thing? Oh, yeah. The fact that he has skills, what Man of Action was saying. He has skills like his ability to climb walls because he's used to climbing rock faces in the mountains and things like that. So he has these extra qualities that you don't see all the time, which make him an extremely interesting character. Speaking of woke, Red Sonja is to be played by a mixed woman. Yeah, so I heard. They've already destroyed Red Sonja over, is it, I don't know, who's publishing Red Sonja right now? Is it, I don't think it's still Dark Horse. I can't even remember. I did buy some recently, but they are awful. They're just completely destroying the character over there where they're publishing it now. So they've already destroyed that character. I mean, in that form, anyways. And someone can write a really good Red Sonja character, hopefully when it becomes something in the public domain. Let's see, scrolling down. The Complete Chronicles of Conan is a great read. Oz the Great Sage, thank you very much. I don't have the Complete Chronicles of Conan, unfortunately. That would be something I should put on my list of things I want to read. So, scrolling down. I remember something about Conan scolding a bully a few years ago in one of the books. A few years ago? Would this be from Marvel or would this be from some other publisher? Because who, again, I can't remember off the top of my head the publisher for Conan for the last couple of years, because this Conan only started 2019. But again, I wouldn't say that would be something that Conan is foreign to Conan at all, scolding a bully. Usually he wouldn't scold the bully. Usually he'd take his head and smash it into a wall. That would be the extent of what he would do if he saw something like that going on, just because, right? It's like, you're torturing this weak person. Well, guess what? I'm going to take your face and just bash it into the wall, and you're going to lose most of your teeth. See how you like that? That's the Conan thing to do, right? So, scrolling down. Fake account says, I grew up on Conan after the crap Jason Momoa did. Yeah. Again, I don't like most of the movies, but of the best ones of the movies would be the Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, in my opinion, even though they're campy to say the least. I still enjoy them to the point where I would watch them again and again. So Jay says, hey, RJ, how you doing, Jay? So scrolling down. Yeah, Drew has a comment here saying, and people wonder why everyone is going to manga. I can see why everybody is going to manga. Honestly, I do. But at the same time, can you really say that you can find anything like Conan the Barbarian in manga? When I thought about it, I actually did think about this question. The only thing that I could really come up with would be Berserk. And that's something really, I think, a flip side of Conan right there, because, I can't remember again off the top of my head. What's the name of the guy with the batlet, or the batlet? Guts' friend, the one who becomes the dark god. This is the exact opposite journey of Conan, right? If you take Conan as being someone who's chaotic neutral, and becomes lawful good, you have within that story someone who is chaotic neutral, and then he becomes lawful evil. So that's the only thing that I can think of that would even come close to Conan within manga. Perhaps there's other books that I'm not aware of. Let's hope there is, because it's a great genre. Um, sword and sorcery, old kind of sword and sorcery, down in the dirt, blood and guts kind of sword and sorcery that I think sometimes just deserves to be there, especially on your shelf, so that you can see, I don't know, this, as was said in the comments, a stripped down version of how mankind sometimes needs to live. So scrolling down, let's see. Man of Action says Zub doesn't know the material. He doesn't want to know it either. Well, you might know better than I do, Man of Action, because again, I think he's trying at the very least, but I think that once again they've played too many tricks with the backstory of Conan to make it fit within this current iteration. Either what they used to do, although they did try to tie that all together, which I don't think worked, or the actual story. But again, is that him or is that Marvel trying to tell him where to go? I don't know. So scrolling down, Incubus Time Lord says, there was an issue of The Savage Sword of Conan where Conan was a young man, meets a young Acer who doesn't fight with a sword. One second, I gotta re-up these covers so it goes off of my screen so I can read. Who doesn't fight with a sword, who was an analog for Captain America. Does anyone remember that story? I don't. Although I may actually own it, but I don't remember that story. So scrolling down, Jay says, hey RJ, do you know if Kelly Sue DeConnick is married or she's single? No, she's married. And she has 2 kids. She's always on Twitter talking about her going to karate or something like that with her kids, right? So yeah, I'm pretty sure that she's married and she has 2 kids. Not to put that information out there as to dox her or anything like that, because this is just public information. I don't know who her husband actually is. Some people were saying in my last video about who her husband was, and I got to look that up. But yeah, I do believe she is. The reason why I do know that is because, again, I want to do a video about action scenes within comics, comparing old action scenes, some great old action scenes, some that I think are the best in comics, with the ones that you see in especially fight scenes, like one-on-one, hand-to-hand combat fight scenes that you see in comics today. And the comparison that I was going to draw was the fact that in those old books, at the very least from the 1980s, again, you have old interviews or new interviews with old comic writers, and you have one of the women writers for these books saying, I had to go and learn hand-to-hand combat in order to write a good action scene, in order to write a good a fight scene, right? And then you have Kelly Sue DeConnick saying, oh, I want to go to karate with my kids. And she's the kind of woman that would go to these things. And well, here's a little bit about myself. I was actually going to talk about this in the other video that I'll probably do sometime in the future, but I used to teach Taekwondo. And she would be the type of person where the guys who ran the school would say, yeah, she really doesn't deserve a belt up, but she took the test and she pays the money and she has her kids here and she pays on time. So just give it to her anyways. So that's the kind of woman I think Kelly Sue DeConnick is, with her going to karate with her kids. Anyways, I'll just leave that as it is. Anyway, scrolling down. Let's see, scrolling down. Dungeon Master Blaster says you have to have the heart, aka the core of the overall story. Yes, that's what's missing within almost every one of these Marvel comics right now. They don't know the core of the story. The funny thing is that I was going to say too, we shouldn't expect this anymore from these writers. It's not going to be there. The funny thing that I was thinking about is the fact that you have a lot of these YouTubers and they do videos and they've done them for a while where they're taking these Marvel shows and they're saying, this is an Easter egg meaning this and this and this. But we've now seen with Wanda and Vision that these writers don't have a clue about any of these things. So why in the world would anybody watch these videos anymore? I don't know, or even make the videos anymore. Because no, all these things you think are Easter eggs, they're not there. They're just you thinking about these things. Maybe I do the same with Conan. I don't know. But yeah, they don't know the core of anything within Marvel. So trying to piece together what you think actually should be and what they're writing is a fool's task. So scrolling down. What browsers do Sumerians use? Google Chrome. Chrome. Yes, yes. All right, scrolling down. I gotta stop laughing from that. Scrolling down. Ablaze. Ablaze is the one that is doing some of the comics. Yes, Ablaze is the publisher right now publishing the Sumerian. So Ablaze is doing a better Conan comic with the Sumerian, which I have bought as well. I bought the last issue that was out last month. And yes, I know those are just French adaptations of the Howard stories. They are. But still at the same time, it's fun because they take the stories and they put them at the back of the issue so you can read the actual text from Howard. And then you can go back and look at, or you can do it beforehand and look at how they're trying to portray them in the book. So it's really interesting if you ask me, especially with that. So scrolling down, I know this is going to jump on me. Just one second. This chat jumps at me every once in a while because I'm so far behind. So scrolling down, let's see. 90s Marvel was mostly X-Men and Spider-Man. The other Marvel characters were second tier at best for that decade. Well, I agree. Especially, well, Spider-Man was everywhere. So scrolling down. Yep, there it jumped on me. Just give me 1 second. I gotta go back to where I was, which I gotta find. So scrolling up, trying to find out where I was. So give me a second here. I apologize for my lack of ability to deal with StreamYard. All right, I'm just going to scroll down again. Somebody had a good comment that I just missed. I hate this. I hate missing people's comments is really what I mean. So, oh, I am really far behind in the comment section. I'm going to have to speed up a little bit. So, okay, I'll just scroll down from where I am. So someone says, let's see, Man of Action. We'll just start with Man of Action. That art isn't good for Conan. I'm not entirely sure they're talking about. So let's scroll down just a little more. Apologize for the technical difficulties. We shall now return to our regular scheduled program. Fizchozo says, what one-shot Conan story is your favorite? That would be Conan and the Tree of Death. That is a one-shot Conan story. From Savage Sword of Conan. I call it the Conan on the Cross because that's much more easy to roll off the tongue than Conan and the Tree of Death. So scrolling down. Earl Norman's art was pretty good for Conan. Not entirely sure. I can't pull that up in my mind right now, what his art looks like. So Fake Account says, what are your thoughts on the rumor that Tela is going to be the new He-Man on Kevin Smith's He-Man Netflix show, most likely Adam being killed off and her taking his place? Yeah, I don't care about these shows anymore. I really don't. As bad as comics are, television is just a write-off at this point, especially just American television. Go watch anime and you could never get through the entire bulk of it, even if you picked out one subgenre of a subgenre. Scrolling down. Greetings from Panama. In Latin America, classic Conan by Smith, Buscema, and Company are being reprinted, and it is a thing to behold. Both Comic Code and Savage Sword of Conan. Well, I wish they would do that here. I really would. Although, like I said, I want to buy the original. Again, what is the Conan the Barbarian #1 from Marvel? Probably priced around 600 to 800 right now. I would put that investment in. I would do that because I think that's a worthy purchase. But I would certainly like to buy all the rest from 1 to 25, which they're between $40 and $80 usually. So scrolling down. Oh, Fourth Age. You have barbarian stories in your head? I've been kicking one around for years. I hope to see yours soon. I hope to see it soon too. I really want to write it. I like I said, I am so flabbergasted by the amount of support that I got for Thomas Valiant that I gotta get it out as quickly as I can, because I want to make it a beautiful piece of, well, not art, but a beautiful comic, and tell more stories. Again, not skipping on this story, not skipping on any stories, because knowing that how I make this story and how I produce it for my audience is going to determine whether or not I can make the next story. So yeah, I just have so many stories in my head that I want to tell, and that is one that is at the top, besides Thomas Valiant. Hex Harper says, I would totally read a Conan book written by you. That would be great. Again, hopefully we will see that in the near future. So scrolling down. So many, there are Filipinos, that's what they were, Filipinos that were doing. This is what I was just talking about earlier in the stream. Many inkers were Filipinos. Alfredo Alsala was one of the greatest. Ironically, Buscema hated his work. Yeah. Again, that's a lost art. Inking to that degree. We got to bring that back. So, Man of Action says, what do I think of Cull? I think I answered that already. I love Cull. And I have bought a lot of what I was missing for the run of Cull. I searched those out and bought them, even before I bought the Conan comics, because I want to buy the Conan ones next. That's my new purchase that I'm looking for. Early Conan, fill up the holes and buy ones that are better condition than some of them that I have. So scrolling down a little bit, sometimes the background art itself is a panel in a panel actually sells me on the art style direction. Yes, I agree completely. And this is what happens with a lot of Conan. You're looking at things in the background going, wow. Scrolling down. And again, like I said, with those Marvel Treasury editions where they reprinted that Conan, you could see every detail. It was great. So scrolling down, I'm going to have to move faster with these comments because I'm already half hour over when I usually quit. So I'll scroll down to comments that are questions only, hopefully, although I usually catch myself not doing that. I'm going to study John Buscema, and I'll try to show you RJ. Okay. That sounds great. I would love artists, any artist, let me put this out there. I don't usually like to do this on my normal videos because I want to keep focused on the ideas that I'm presenting. But if you're an artist, contact me. I'm trying to put my email at the bottom of every video now, at the very least, every regular weekend video. What is it? It's RJ's the Fourth Age at gmail.com. So you can find it through my channel if you go to the about section of the channel and go through the little dance where you can get to the email. It's there. So if you're an artist and you want to work with me, just give me a line and we'll see. I might not have something for you right now, but I have a list of artists where I want to do different kinds of stories with different kinds of art. I don't want to stick with one kind of art. I think every genre of story um, has its own kind of art that you need to focus on. So a plethora of artists would be great. So scrolling down, the fourth age. Hey, RJ, not Conan related, but what are your thoughts on Marvel character Gwenpool and if you've read any of it, her original run in 2016? I haven't read really any of her run in 2016. I ran across it. I flipped through it. I read a couple of panels. That's about it. I did read some of the, oh, what was it? The Hawkeye series where she was in it. It wasn't anything spectacular to say the least. So I'm not entirely sure what the appeal to that character for that character actually is. So scrolling down, this is a comment that I have to read. Philip says, Conan is the antithesis of the SJW woke nonsense. That is 100% correct. And that's, again, why you're not getting good Conan comics right now. You're getting the best that can come out of Marvel because I'm sure the people running Marvel don't want to publish Conan, except for the fact that it sells or there is an audience for it out there. I'm sure. I can almost guarantee I would lay money on the fact that if you took a current Conan comic that is published by Marvel and set it down in front of Kelly Sue DeConnick, she would freak out in so many different ways. So scrolling down, another one from Hex. He says, fourth age, I don't think you're that mumbly or whatever. You're able to keep going at a good pace. Well, thank you very much. I try not to be mumbly. A lot of people do say I talk a little bit too fast, but I think I talk a little too slow. So, what do you think of Dark Horse's run with Conan? I think they had some good stories, but again, I missed. Again, it's me because I was brought up on Conan the Barbarian from Marvel, and it's something unique, as I was saying, to Conan the Barbarian from Marvel about the continuous connection of the stories. So it's something that I miss in all of these other stories. They might be good stories. They might be good Conan stories. They might have some really interesting elements to them, but I always miss what was a continuous story within Conan the Barbarian for me because I read it like that. So scrolling down, just too many good comments for me to pass them up. Manga usually has one writer consistently working on a series for an extremely long time, and often the stories end up being consistent in quality and direction. That's funny because most of the manga, well, I don't consume that much manga, but most of the anime that I consume is really usually just very short, and it's only 12 to 24 episodes, and that's it. That's all you get, right? They take, I think, the best of what's going on and then they move it along. So I'm used to very short and very condensed storylines. Again, I realize that they don't do the manga justice in a lot of places, but that's all I have time for right at the moment. And again, I usually try to purchase only what I can find in the story that's in front of me at my comic shop. I wish they had more manga. I really do. So Gregory says, what about if you make a knight errant for your Conan type comic that's instead of a barbarian type? I think, honestly, isn't there something like that? Oh, Jusku did a bunch of art for, oh, I can't remember for the life of me. It was a knight. He had a skull for his crest, and it was very much in the vein of Conan, especially the way that he drew it. So I do believe something like that has been done, but that's not where I would be going with the stories in my head because already I have an opening scene for the comic in my head and a layout in my head of how the story is to go. This is the way I usually write things, is that I don't actually write them until later on. I usually have it going through my head for months and months, if not years, and then finally have the entire thing hammered out because I write it in my head and then I write it down, which I have a weird memory that can do that kind of thing. So it's not that difficult for me at times. So scrolling down, Dennis says, I think Conan actually looks better in black and white. I like the old Savage Sword magazine. These weird colors just don't do it for me. Well, I have to say that sometimes the colors do get in the way of the art. When you're looking at black and white Conan, it does draw your eye to the detail within the art. Agreed. It's like Renzo's art for Thomas Valiant. I didn't want it to be colored because it was so beautiful, but then again, it does look, it does bring out a much more of a depth, I would say, when you put the coloring in. So scrolling down, let's see. Man of Action says there's no penciler or inks on these new books. They're all digital art. Yeah, that's unfortunate, to say the least. Although it does mean some artists can work faster that way. So scrolling down, Philip says, have you checked out any of the Ablaze Conan books? I have. They're actually pretty good. He says, the huge actual Howard story is pretty cool. Yes. One of the things I'm doing too, or trying to do as well, is that there's a guy on YouTube that has read some of the early stories, some of the stuff that's now in the public domain, to go over those stories again just by listening to them. So, but yes, those books, I don't enjoy all of them, but I think sometimes they take a little too much liberty, but I do enjoy them. Scrolling down, I'm going to have to go faster. Scrolling down. Flame Story says, I got to re-up these images. Give me a second. When copyright expires in America, things will be great for Conan. I really hope so. Fitzjozo says, what is your favorite one-shot Conan comic? Again, this is the question I already answered. So apparently I've been going over comments that I've already went over. Anyways, I've answered that already. My favorite Conan story is Conan and the Tree of Death from Savage Sword of Conan #5. Because I'm talking about comics here. Obviously, I'm talking about comics. Scrolling down. So let's see. Scrolling down. Let's see if we got any more comments that are for me. Scrolling down. Let's see. I don't think this comment is for me, but I really want to read it. Also, have you heard of the comic Michael Valiant? I hope you don't have problems with it. It's European. No, I haven't heard of it before. That's okay. That's no problem. It's a beautiful name to use. So scrolling down. Let's see. Oh, this is a comment that is not meant for me, but it does bring up an interesting point that I want to, that I forgot to talk about. It's the fact that I'm complaining about these Marvel covers, but you know what they did for the king size Conan? The the comic that they put on the shelf for the normal book that was going to the comic stores, they put the worst cover in the world on it. And they had all these variant covers, which again, excuse me, which you could only get if you ordered so many copies. If your comic store ordered so many copies of this book, you could only get the variant covers that way. So they put the complete, what all it is Conan's face in a snarl. That's it. It takes up the entire page. There is nothing that is not his face on the page. It's ridiculous. The king size Conan #1 that they put out. And they took all the beautiful art for Conan and they put it on these covers that no one is going to see because no one is going to buy that many Conan. I'm sorry. The way the comic shops are right now, it's not going to happen. So it's ridiculous. Anyways, scrolling down. Let's see if any more of these comments are for me. Let's see. Here's a comment. Hey RJ, I'm late. How late am I? I don't know when you put that comment up. Well, it says 11:01, so no, I guess that would be 12:01. So you're about an hour late. But that's okay. I'm going to rant for another little while about Conan. So, other people asking me if I've read the Ablaze comics. Yes, I have. Scrolling down, scrolling down. Did I like the Conan remake? Let me put it this way. I watched it and it wasn't bad, but for the life of me, I cannot remember any of the story right now. So take that for what it's worth. I can tell you the story for Arnold Schwarzenegger's Conan the Barbarian, which I haven't seen in that long either. But, you know, again, it's a forgettable story. So for me, anyway, so that's exactly where it is. You might make a good movie, but is it going to stick in people's minds? That's the real question. So Vizchozo says, yes, Dynamite is publishing the Red Sonja. Oh, Dynamite. Right. It's Dynamite, not Red Horse. Or sorry, not Dark Horse. Yeah, they're doing awful things with Red Sonja over at Dynamite. Scrolling down. Let's see. Griffith. Yes, Griffith is the bad guy from Berserk. Thank you very much, Griffith. Although I have to say, um, I had to rewatch Berserk not too long ago and the old Berserk. I wasn't watching the digital stuff that they put on. What was it, like 5-6 years ago? They redid it all. But no, I watched the original series, and it's so slow these days. Oh my god, it's slow. I had to watch it on 2 times the speed. Well, having seen things before, it doesn't really matter, but I had to watch it on 2 times the speed because the old way of doing the Berserk art was to just take a still and to just pan slowly, slowly, painfully, slowly up it. Anyways, yes, Griffith is his name. Thank you very much. So scrolling down. Let's see, scrolling down. Is this comment for me? I don't know. Incubus Time Lord says, the Scottish man turns into the magical being called the Clansman. Mary Jane then gets possessed by the spirit of Red Sonja. It turns out that the Scottish man is the direct future descendant of who? Of Ian Og, and MJ is the reincarnation of Red Sonja. I don't know what Incubus Time Lord is actually talking about. It sounds very much like that Spider-Man issue where Mary Jane becomes the incarnation of Red Sonja, and the museum guard becomes Cool Goth, I do believe. Is it Cool Goth? Um, I do believe it's Cool Goth. You could just go back to my video where I made fun of Zach for about half an hour by doing a parody of his comic reviews. I did a review on that comic. So another comment for me. It says she's married to Matt Fraction, I think. That's what people were telling me. I really have to look that up. So scrolling down, they're talking about Kelly Sue DeConnick. Crud. Okay. Very least I know where I am this time after it skipped on me. And Nascenti was the one, Mark, thank you very much, who was talking about taking classes to learn how to take a punch and things like that. Yeah. I do believe her when she actually says things like that, as opposed to believing Kelly Sue DeConnick and she's getting anything out of her karate classes. So again, people are telling me she's married. DeConnick is married to Matt Fraction. Okay. So scrolling down. Let's see. Yes. Anna said he took up boxing to write Daredevil. Yeah. That's exactly what she did. And again, when she describes it, she says, I wanted to know what it's like to punch someone, but also what it's like to take a punch. So I really believe her when she actually put some effort into what she was doing so she could understand what she was talking about when she was writing a good story. So, scrolling down, scrolling down. I see. Let's see. Comment from me here. Fake account says, Do you think Arnold will ever give us a good movie again? A return to form, blood soaked 80s style movie? I think it will never happen. I don't think it'll ever happen either, but if he's going to make a movie right now, he should do Conan the King. Honestly, he's old and gray, and that fits in Conan the King. He can get in some shape, become Conan the King, and that will be his last movie. That's what he should do. So, scrolling down, question saying, what do you think about Grant Morrison's All Star Superman? Honestly, it's in a pile of stuff that I still have to read. That's what I think about it. I know it's really old, but I still haven't gotten to it. I have so many comics that I have to read. So it wasn't on the top of my list. So another comment here saying, is your campaign still going for Thomas Valiant, by the way? Yes, it is. Also, is it going to be a one shot or are you planning to make it a longer story? Well, it is exactly what I tried to describe here for Conan. It is a one shot in so much as you will not need anything in order to jump onto the story, and it will be a complete story in itself. There's 3 chapters to it for the entire 80 pages. So it's a one shot story. So you can read that and just be satisfied with that and have a complete story. But there will be a second. We did so well that once we get this done and out, then Renzo has agreed that we should do a second book. So there will be a continuation of the story. And I hope that we can get that out as quickly as possible. My problem is that I love Renzo's art so much that I want him to do the entire thing, but having one artist do 80 pages worth of art takes a long time. So I'm going to have to see if we might be able to do other things in between. And one of those things might be the book that I want to do for a Conan-like story. So scrolling down, let's see. KJ says, do you plan to create more characters or more comics in the Dominant Valley universe, or will you go on to write stories in other universes? Nope. As far as I'm concerned, I have one universe. That's it. They're all going to be tied into that universe. I'm not going to do like Zach and write stories here, there, and everywhere. Even my Conan story, I would like to tie into the Thomas Valiant universe, just like Marvel does tie Conan into their superhero universe. So yeah, all of my stories that I intend to write are going to be tied into the Thomas Valiant universe. And hopefully they're not going to get stale. I want to explore a lot of different kinds of storytelling and see which ones everybody wants. And hopefully work with others, even working with other writers as well, besides artists. If I can get to that stage within, 3-4 years, that would be great. Scrolling down. So scrolling down. Let's see, scrolling down. Fake account has another question. What do you think of Invincible? I just watched the animated show on Netflix and it's my new favorite comic now. I was late to the party on this one. I don't I don't know, fake account. Like I said, I don't watch much of anything. I have access to a Netflix account, but right now, reading comics to do my 10-second comic review and then writing for Thomas Valiant and getting everything done takes up all of my time. So besides the fact that, whatever I do else for work. So scrolling down, let's see. Incubus Time Lord has a comment. I don't think it's for me, but it's very funny. Reeing for a little bit. Straight white males, patriarchy, the sound of Marvel comic writers when they see fan service and the male gaze. Yeah, indeed. So scrolling down. Oh, almost at the end of the comments. Let's see. A lot of people praising the Ablaze comic for Conan the Barbarian. So scrolling down, they have a lot of variant covers with those, I do believe. So player one has a question. I like Conan, but I love Solomon Kane better. Honestly, I haven't got deep into the Solomon Kane universe. Well, it's the same universe, really, sort of, but I would like to see more stories about Solomon Kane as well. I find him to be what we need, Puritan witch finder general. Excuse me. Um, I think there's a strain of Conan the Barbarian in Solomon Kane, just because, again, both of them hate magic. So, yeah, that would be a good kind of story to tell as well. So, scrolling down, Player One also says Arnold is apparently already planning to do a Conan film, but I don't know what status it is in. I hear it may be coming up for production soon. I, well, you hope and pray, and at the same time dread whether or not they're going to make a movie like Conan the King, because they could just mess everything up so intensely. So, okay, so it's going to be a self-contained story that can fit into a series. I like it. That's exactly what I intend to do, yes. Player One again says, will you ever, just one second, will you ever write for Solomon Kane? The character is experiencing a bit of a rebirth. Well, I like to, well, here's the thing. Again, I would need to get deep into the character in order to write a character like that. That's what I usually do. Again, I explained this in my last live stream. What I like to do is I'd like to take an existing character where the story I think is going to go somewhere great, but it bombs. And then I say to myself, okay, I'm going to write the ending that I want to happen for this character. And then once I write the ending for it, then I have so much of a story written that I have to go back and write the beginning, and then I have an entire story that is based upon my own ideas. So if I was ever to write a Solomon Kane story, it would have to be me getting deep into the lore of Solomon Kane and understanding exactly where this story is coming from and write off of something like that. So scrolling down, Flame Destroyer says, I recommend Vineland Saga if you can find it. I do believe that's an anime now, is it not? Or at the very least, one, what is it, like one series of an anime? Is it? No, I'm thinking of something else. Okay, Vineland Saga it is, if I can find it. So, oops, clicked on the wrong one. Let's see. Did they ever do anything with Thanagor? No, not that I know of. Honestly, it went for whatever run it went. I know it went up to at least, what do I have, 24, 36, maybe something around there. But no, I don't think they ever did anything with that series. So I'm going to have to scroll down to the bottom and leave it there because I've been talking for almost 2 hours now. So scrolling down to see if there's any more comments for me. Let's see. It's time to abandon Marvel and DC altogether and start doing our own comics that are not answerable to psycho SJW or their putrid and insufferable intersectional feminism. I agree, but I'm still going. I liked. Here's the thing about Marvel and DC. A lot of people keep on saying, "Why don't you abandon them? Why do you keep on doing these reviews?" I do them because honestly, it gives me a good picture of what not to do, and especially when I compare them with old comics that I'm reading, it gives me the exact. Because honestly, a lot of us can still fall into the trap of doing the same thing that these SJW quote unquote progressive people do, because we're so, I don't know, ensconced in that mindset from our televisions and from our society around us. Sometimes you gotta look it square in the face and say, okay, I need to not do that. So that's why one of the reasons why I still do it. I still read these comics. So last question. The fourth age. Have you read? No, I haven't. I haven't read that. So again, I have a stack of comics. I have like 2 long boxes worth of comics that I still have to go through to read. Some of them being my new Conan and my new Co that I have read, and also bought a very big stack of Legion of Superheroes too. So those are the comics that I'm reading besides the new ones that I usually review. All right, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you everybody for showing up to my live stream and listen to me rant about Conan for 2 hours. Just to let everybody know once again, if you're not getting notifications for my videos, they are put up every weekend. So depending on your time zone, either a Saturday or a Sunday. So you might want to go over to my channel and just check out on Sunday to see if I posted a new video. On Monday, certainly there would be one by then. Also, the link for my graphic novel, Thomas Valiant, is in the description. It is my attempt to take all the great story elements of comics to bring back the hero element and write a true hero, something that would fit in just beautifully, I think, with 80s and 90s comics. So if any of that feels or sounds interesting to you, you might want to click on the link in the description and see if my graphic novel is for you. So, one last comment. Fourth Age, thank you for the stream. Glad I could make it this week. I'm glad you're here as well. So I'll leave it there. Thank you again, everyone, for showing up. Hopefully, I can get more of a Conan Appreciation Society going here. And again, I wanted to mention again, also, if any of you are artists and you want to work with me, go to my YouTube channel, find the email address for the channel, which is in the About section, and email me. Just let me know. I might not, again, have anything for you right now because I'm working furiously to get Thomas Valiant out, but I would love to hear from you, and hopefully I can work with many great artists in the future. So thank you for the third time for everybody who is showing up, and I gotta go. I'll see you later. Bye.